And our next speaker is Dr. Fairuz, Senior Consultant from Horus Specialty Eye Care, Bangalore, with expertise in ocular oncology, ocular trauma, socket reconstruction. And of course, we all need to know that she's the awesome member scientific committee too. And she is going to tell us on the newer treatment modalities in lid tumors. On to you, Fairuz.
Thank you very much, ma'am, and AIOS ARC team for this kind invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and especially sharing this platform with the stalwarts here today, respected teachers, colleagues, and friends. I hope my slide is visible.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So I will be taking you through few important eyelid lesions, which is treated other than surgery. And I hope, we will touch upon a little bit of the newer advances in eyelid lesions as well. I have no financial disclosures or interest, and these are my affiliations. So this is a 30-day-old female baby with IUGR, a preterm cesarean delivery at 36th week. Birth weight of 2.1 kg. These are all very important in the subsequent, discussion that I'm going to do. And mother had a gestational hypertension. There was an anomaly scan which was done and an amniocentesis which was done at 5th month. And this is how the baby presented with, as you can see here, a superficial reddish strawberry-like lesion sitting in the upper lid of the left eye. So the diagnosis is not difficult here at all. It is a case of an infantile childhood hemangioma. So how did we treat it? So we are very fortunate at this point of time that we have a wonder oral propranolol with us, where we often resort to in treating capillary hemangioma. So the child, we went ahead treating this child with oral propranolol, 2.5 milligram per kg body weight. Along with that, since it was a superficial lesions, an addition of topical timolol was also used in this particular case. And as you can see here, right from day 4, there has been, noted changes in the lesion, and this is day 30. And in the next slide, you can see that at 4th month, the entire lesion disappeared. So basically, infantile hemangioma, I've put few slides here just for the postgraduate students over here, because it's an important question for you and you need to know about it. It is a benign vascular tumor seen in infancy or childhood, and it can be congenital as well. And the newer, thing which has been put forward is the presence of GLUT1. If it's positive, it is infantile infancy hemangioma, and if it's negative, it is a congenital hemangioma. So again, classification, it can be superficial, subcutaneous, deep, or combined according to Rootman. And morphologically, it can be nodular or segmental. So there are certain risk factors that you have to look for. And this patient had 4 risk factors out of all these. It was a female child, low birth weight, amniocentesis was done, and the mother was on progesterone therapy during pregnancy. Other than that, preeclampsia, placental anomalies, and family history of hemangioma are the other risk factors. So the natural cause is supposed to be understood because it is during the proliferative phase where there is a rapid growth until 4 to 6 months, that whatever treatment you give, especially oral propranolol, when it acts, but giving it in a plateau phase or an involution phase, it may not help for the patient. So these are the bucket list of things, management modalities that is available: intralesional steroids, oral beta blockers, topical beta blockers, intralesional beta blockers, which I don't have any experience. Well, oral beta blockers and topical beta blockers is what is commonly used in my practice. There are reports of interferon, pulse dye, laser therapy, and of course, surgical excision. So this was a huge contribution which came up in 2008 when oral propranolol started being used as a primary management modality in capillary hemangioma. In fact, there were papers which was published further on the use of topical application of timolol maleate gel. In this patient, we used actually topical timolol eye drops, which was soaked in gauze pieces, and it was applied over the lesion. So the mechanism of action is basically vasoconstriction, decreasing the expression of VEGF, and apoptosis of capillary endothelial cells. If you ask, is it safe to give in a pediatric patient? Yes, it is safe, but there has to be a strict monitoring of the vital signs in the blood sugar. Yet another case where this child was advised for a surgical excision of this lesion in the forehead. So it's very, very important to do a systemic evaluation of this child. So the diagnosis is very, very clear, although the lid lesion is not too very clear except for the reddish discoloration over the surface. There are few more lesions in the body in this particular child. The child was also put on oral propranolol, and this is 3 months post-treatment, and this is 3 years post-treatment with the regression of the lesion. So if you want a reduction immediately, because of the risk of amblyopia is high, even intralesional steroids can be considered, including triamcinolone acetonide and betamethasone. There are systemic association which has to be identified. So a thorough pediatric evaluation is very, very, very important. Second case is a 24-year-old lady with a complaint of lower lid swelling in the left eye, noticeable since 5 years. She also complains of associated aching pain, especially when she stoops down. And this is the lesion which is sitting over here. Kind of a bluish discoloration on palpation, is very, very soft. Extraocular motility is free and full. And well, so what we did was a Valsalva's maneuver. Any vascular lesion in and around the periocular area, we would always want to rule out a varix. Well, in this particular case, the Valsalva's maneuver, as you can see here, is negative. So what we did was we went ahead doing a cerebral angiogram in order to rule out any connection, any AV malformation. A digital subtraction angiogram was also done, and there was no AV malformation. So the diagnosis was an eyelid venous malformation, left eyelid, left lower eyelid. So what we did was an injection of bleomycin 1 session. And this is how after 1 session of injection bleomycin, the lesion is almost disappeared in this patient. So for the postgraduates, again, the ISSVA classification for vascular anomalies, it's good to know this. It is classified into vascular tumors and vascular malformation. I'm not going into the details. This is a very interesting case of a 64-year-old gentleman, lower lid swelling, left eye 3 months, history of incision curettage 2 months back. And he says the swelling increased 4 days. He also complains of a swelling in the preauricular area as well. So taking a closer look, there is definitive lash loss. The posterior lid margin is rounded. The architecture is totally lost. And you can see this diffuse lesion extending from the medial lower tarsal conjunctiva involving the tarsus up to the lateral. But something which was absent to call it a sebaceous gland carcinoma, which all the other typical features are here, is the feeder vessels. Although there is intrinsic vascularity, there is no very prominent feeder vessel which is present over here. So I was personally not convinced, although the patient was referred as a case of sebaceous gland carcinoma, to go for a full excision biopsy. So an incision biopsy was done. And well, he also had another lesion in the upper tarsus. So it was not really falling in place for a sebaceous gland carcinoma. In fact, he had a palpable preauricular lymph node and a level 2 cervical lymph node also, which again was kind of, suspicious whether there is a rare possibility of a sebaceous gland carcinoma. But the FNAC of the level 2 cervical lymph node came as AFB positive. And this came out to be an eyelid granuloma, which was tuberculosis. He was treated with local triamcinolone injection at the local site and anti-tuberculosis treatment at 9 months. And he resolved. So this is a very, very interesting case of a 59-year-old lady with redness and discomfort, 1.5 years. She has been going from one clinician to another, and she was on topical eye drops with lubricating eye drops, topical steroids. There was no resolution, and there was still progression. And as you can see here, the entire upper lid and the lower lid, more in the lower lid, is involved. There is a lot of keratin, there is a lot of discharge. The periocular marginal skin is involved. And this is how her bulbar conjunctiva and the cornea looks like. She had a vision of 6/60 when she came. The cornea is involved. Only the central portion, there was some amount of clarity in the cornea, the bulbar conjunctiva, the tarsal conjunctiva, everything was involved. In fact, so at this point of time, there are two things that you would think of. Asymmetric blepharoconjunctivitis is sebaceous gland carcinoma or diffuse squamous cell carcinoma. In the presence of the keratin, sebaceous was down in the list and SCC was up in the list. So what I did was a map biopsy, and this went to Kaustup. So in fact, in her caruncular area, this was more nodular. So a larger biopsy was done from the caruncular area, and a lot of biopsies was taken. In fact, 19 specimens were taken, and this came out to be an eyelid diffuse OSSN, and the caruncle, in fact, was an invasive SCC. So what we did was, I did a deeper excision, wide margin caruncular excision with AMG. And apart from that, what we did was, in order to preserve the eye, cryotherapy, topical interferon, injection interferon alpha 2B. And well, this is how we do the injection of interferon alpha 2B in diffuse OSSN, where she in fact received a total of 9 million international units. And cryotherapy was also done. And this is how she looks like, after 4 months. Recent advances, I'll quickly go through. In squamous cell carcinoma, it is the epidermal growth factor receptor targeted therapy. There is array of drugs which has come up. I have no experience with it personally. And these are the reports which has been published by Dr. Bita Ismaili. Basal cell carcinoma is the hedgehog inhibitor. Well, these are the reports which has been published. And the checkpoint inhibitors, immune checkpoints for melanoma. It's useful in uveal and conjunctival melanoma, but the application of eyelid is still not experimented and reported yet. And these are the PD-1, PD-L1, and the CTLA4 checkpoint inhibitors. So conclusion, eyelid tumors, the non-surgical management, there is many things in the basket with oral medication, local injections, topical therapy, local applications, lasers, and molecular pathway inhibitors, as well as cryotherapy. But these are all very, very case specific. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Thanks a lot, Fairoz. That was a very interesting talk and
Thank you,
lot
ma'am.
of information. Wonderful it was. I just wanted to ask you that there must be quite a lot of challenges when you talk about these newer treatment modalities, and which is still not too available in many parts.
Yeah, not too available in India, ma'am. It's mostly certain drugs are still under trial in United States, where I spoke about the checkpoint inhibitors. So it's not available in India, and it's quite expensive as well. So we are still, even in United States, the trials, they're still learning the side effects and the, long-term efficacy of these drugs. So we still don't have it in our hand. Although epithelial growth factor inhibitors are available, it is available in India in certain centers. For the head and neck cancers, they are using, but it's not the first or the primary modality of treatment. If it is, there is a recurrence, they've already done a surgical excision, that's when they use it. But these are available in prominent oncology centers in India. Yeah.
Vidya, you have anything to add, or shall we go on to our next speaker?
We'll go on to the next speaker. She has covered it all. Thank you very much, Fairoz, for a wonderful talk.
Thank you, Vidya. Thanks.
Truly wonderful.